Hello, everybody. My name is Doug Fink. I'm the organizer of the PowerShell Meetup Group here in New York City. And tonight, I'm very much looking forward to our next presenter, Aaron Nelson, and he's going to talk about why Jupyter Notebooks are changing everything. It's an exciting topic that I enjoy. And before we get going, just a couple of things. Next month, we're going to have Jeff Hicks, and he's actually with us tonight as well. I see him in the chat. And he'll be talking about teaching PowerShell. So I'm very excited to see that as well, and really glad he's going to join us next month. In addition, just want to shout out to Sapien Technologies. They sponsor us, and this is a page that shows all of their different tools that are really excellent tools that make you more productive as a PowerShell scripter and other things. You want to drop into their sapien.com, and you can get 45-day trials for these tools. I definitely recommend them. They're very good, and they help you get your job done even quicker. So, a couple other things. I'm going to drop a couple of different links into the chat. One of the links is to where I'll be posting the recording from tonight. It's on my YouTube channel, so it's YouTube Doug Fink. Get on there, subscribe to it, hit the notification button for when I not only post the meetup videos, I also post videos of different things that I think are interesting about different modules, as well as different techniques for PowerShell and other things. So if you're interested in seeing those as they come online, that's a good place to go. And also, Aaron has a GitHub link where you can go grab some things. If you want to follow along and give this stuff a try as we do it, or as he does it, that's the place to go grab that. So moving along, so Jupyter Notebooks. I was going back through my Twitter feed tonight, and I wanted to see when I first chatted with Aaron, and I was quite surprised that we started chatting about 4 years ago about a bunch of different things, and then I think it was last year, maybe a little bit earlier in 2018, he reached out and was asking me about things like the PowerShell kernel for Jupyter Notebooks. And we did a couple of discussions about it back and forths. And then he started showing me stuff about Azure Data Studio and Jupyter Notebooks, and that kind of interactive process really speaks to me for some reason. And he started showing me some really cool things, and we started collaborating on a bunch of different things, and he'll go into it deeper tonight, and I'm really glad he's going to present on it. And I think we'll have some more presentations on Jupyter Notebooks, Azure Data Studio, and other techniques of this sort over the next several months. So Aaron, he's an award-winning author. He's a public speaker, blogger, leader in the SQL Server community. He's got 20 years of experience in architecture, business intelligence, development, and performance tuning of SQL Server, and so much more. And I definitely enjoy when he sends me tweets at 7:30 in the morning on a Saturday saying, "Hey, Doug, how would I do this?" And I'm sitting there on my phone typing PowerShell code into Twitter. And it makes for some very exciting stuff. And then he figures stuff out and he goes, "Hey, Doug, I just contributed something back to one of your PowerShell modules. When are you going to publish it?" And I'm like, we'll get on that right away. So I'm really glad that Aaron, you joined us, and I'm really looking forward to this. So why don't you share your screen and show us what you got.
All right. Start that right now. Let's see, screen 2. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you, and I see your screen is starting to share. And
okay,
I see your screen. Awesome.
All right, and as Jeff Hicks was pointing out in the chat, I am a dad, and I've got 3 rambunctious little kids, and for all I know, they're going to hurt themselves somewhere in the middle of this presentation. I may have to go run off to help with them. So who knows? We'll get as far as we can, and if nothing else, like Jeff said, Doug said, the repo for everything that you're about to see that I've already got typed into here is already posted up there on that repo. So if you look here on the left-hand side, there's all these different files in there, and you can follow along if you like, and or not, and but they're already there for you. So let's get
just as a note, to the folks who joined us, if you want, you can raise your hand in the chat room or in the participant screen, and we can set it up so we can unmute you if you want to ask a question, or if you want to just post a question in the chat room, and then we'll get that to Aaron, and somebody will get an answer for you. So with that, I'll put myself on mute.
Yep, definitely ask questions. Hopefully I've laid this out in an order that kind of makes sense. And some of this is going to be having a bit more of SQL stuff than you probably thought was going to happen. But the SQL side of the story in Notebooks is a little further along. So we're just going to use that as a good demo of what could be coming next with PowerShell Notebooks. So here we are. This is a notebook. We are in Azure Data Studio right now. I'm actually using the Insiders edition. Just came out fresh baked this morning. If you want to follow along, you can go get that. It's pretty easy to find. Just go to aka.ms/get Azure Data Studio.
Can you post that in the chat room?
Sure thing.
Thanks.
It's the WYSIWYG. It keeps on throwing me. New feature, literally came out what? Friday, Thursday?
It was like, yeah, like late last week.
Yeah. So this new feature, I'll walk you through that one in a second. It's pretty cool. But if you want to follow along, get Azure Data Studio. The WYSIWYG features that I'm alluding to are in today's build. They're in Friday's build, but they run better in today's build. Give you a little background on this before we even go any further, because there seems to be some confusion. I don't know how easy that is to see, but this is the About page on Azure Data Studio. And long story short, Azure Data Studio is simply a fork of VS Code. It is merged with what's coming down the pipe from VS Code every couple of days. They're a little bit behind on merging items, from what I understand, but they'll probably get caught back up soon. It's conference season. A lot of new features are coming down the pipe left and right, so hard for all of us to keep up. So yeah, this is just a different flavor of VS Code. And if you're familiar with SQL Server Management Studio, that was a shell out of Visual Studio. So it was similar but different. And this is the same thing, just in the VS Code space. Same, Azure Data Studio is, the SSMS of VS Code, if you will. So it's to that point, a lot of extensions that are in the marketplace for VS Code, you would be able to just grab those and be able to drop them straight into here, just download them locally, and then open them, and they will work just fine. Not all of them, but a lot of them. It's been a long time actually since I ran into one that didn't work well, so that's a great thing. Sorry, Doug, I'm trying to find that chat, and it just doesn't want to be found, which is interesting.
Somebody actually just posted, they also posted the
there.
link as well. So I think we're
okay,
good.
Great. Awesome. Yep. And Visual Studio Code has a different implementation of notebooks, and that's great. Variety is a spice of life. I've come to love what I get with the Azure Data Studio experience. I'm kind of like, I keep on wanting to explore more, find more things, and I'm almost afraid to change because I might get lost in other features. So, the ooh, nice shiny. So anyways, what are Jupyter Notebooks? Well, they can run all kinds of different languages of code. In this case, we're running a PowerShell notebook. And Jupyter Notebooks are comprised of two main basic elements. Text cells, which by default are rendered in Markdown, I suppose, until they come up with a better standard than Markdown. and then code cells. And then the code cell runs whatever kernel you want to pick. In Azure Data Studio, you can get quite a few different kernels available to you. Custo is, if you load the extension, that's a new kernel that's in preview right now. It used to be a Magic, but it was very popular. So it got promoted to full kernel. And again, that's in the insiders build only, and then only if you add the extension. And there's probably bugs. I'll let you know, you know, because it's in insiders. So don't be surprised. There's the .NET PowerShell, and then there's also PowerShell, which came from open source community, as Doug was talking about, from about almost a year ago. And we'll go through that here in a later one. So let's see. Right now, and see this is what I love about it's better than slides, really. It's like the notes in the slides. Put all these little details, remember to tell you at pertinent points. So like, as of right now, Jupyter Notebooks are limited to running a certain single kernel at a time. So if you pick a SQL notebook, you're running a SQL notebook. You can put codes of cell codes, code cells in there. You can put as many as you want. I've got one here. You know, you can just add another code cell right below. And we can do something, you know, get process, you know, and then you've got your little code cell. Obviously, you're probably going to put something more complex than that. You can put as many of these are in there as you want, but once you pick a language, that's what you got. And that's the way that you have the lay of the land as of today. In the future, there may be multi-kernel support, but that's where we are right now. In the case of SQL, I've heard several people say, I have to have multi-kernel support because I need to run a PowerShell task, and then I need to run a SQL task. And the funny thing is, well, you can actually do that today. You just need to go ahead and put it into PowerShell mode from the get-go, run the PowerShell task that you need to run, and then when you're down to the SQL task, go ahead and just do invoke SQL command, and you can do that you know, with invoke SQL command, and you're on your way. So it is possible if you need it. So don't think that you're completely limited. There's also magics, and I'll talk a little bit more on magics in a later section, but not every kernel supports magics. So let's talk about the important things to know. By the way, Doug, can you guys see my screen yet? Or is the text and everything big enough? That's what I'm
you could maybe be, for me, it's okay. Oh, Justin, you're not seeing a screen at all? I see the screen.
Is the text large enough for those who can see it? Okay.
Yeah, Justin, it might be just you with the screen, or maybe a couple of people. A little bigger might be good, but it's fine for me.
Okay. Yeah, I'll bump it up. No problem. All right. So storing the results. So if you download from that repo I pointed everyone to, then you'll see that it's actually got the results of when I ran PS Drive against my machine. I had the SQL Server module loaded, so I've got my SQL Server PS Drive up and ready to go. And all those results are stored in there, and they're stored in JSON format. And that's one of the key things about these notebooks is that when you store a result, whether you store it as, okay, see, I did it, and here's my work. I can prove that I did it. Or just save it for your own self so that you know this is what it looked like the last time it worked. Or maybe if you've ever been working late one night, you finally solved it, and you want to make sure you preserve it, that it was working. Then right here, Jupyter Notebooks are wonderful for that because you can go ahead and just store those results. You just hit save on the file, and it's going to save them. Now, if you don't want to save your results, you know, you're worried about security of a particular cell, you can come in here and you can just clear the results. You can clear all the results if you want. Just come in and hit that little eraser button right there, and that'll clear everything. So don't be afraid of storing results there. It's a great feature, and more that we'll talk about in ways that I use it, even sometimes with Doug when things aren't going right. So what do people use these Jupyter Notebooks for? There are 5, maybe even 6 categories, or maybe 7, 8. But here are some of the top ones that I know of. You can use this as documentation and training. I'm obviously doing that myself right now. It's my documentation for this whole presentation that I'm going to show you today. You can also use it, like I said, for training completely, not just documentation, but do this, do this, do this, and this is how you do it. Under that repo that I pointed y'all to, there's a folder for the Intro to Jupyter Notebooks that we're doing tonight. And then there's one that I did a whole year ago, all PowerShell, on working with Docker. So if you would like to be able to set up a Docker container that has a SQL server in it, just download this repo, and then you can do the open. There's this little notebooks menu here, and you can do open. You can open that folder location, and it'll open up, and it'll walk you through how to set up a Docker container, SQL server on Docker on your local machine, so that you can play with it and check it out. So they're great for training, deploying things. I've used them for, just we need to get something up and running. Here are the steps, but instead of putting all the steps just in a PS1 file, I then put it into a notebook, and I did that so that if something went wrong, I had all these notes, just like I have in here, of what to do. Maybe there's a problem that happens sometimes, but it doesn't happen to everyone, and I'm giving them instructions. If they see this error message, go do this thing. So if the deploy goes successfully, no one needs to look at that message. They can just move on. Another thing that's used for is, or popular to be used for, is collaboration. Doug and I have put a lot of hours into working with PowerShell notebooks and SQL notebooks. Doug was kind enough to help me on some parsing stuff. And sometimes I couldn't get things to work. And Doug wasn't able to figure it out. I might send him a little blurb of code in Twitter, and he's, or I might put something up in a gist file. But in that case, if I'm putting that piece of code up there, I'm only putting the piece of code. I'm not showing the error message. And that's a great thing. Was I used a piece of code, I got an error message, I saved the notebook file, I posted it up into a gist file, and Doug was able to take a look at it and see the error message that I got. So in the situation of, let's say Doug's got a piece of code and it's working on his machine, that's a famous line all developers like to say is, hey, works on my machine. Well, it did work on Doug's machine. It didn't work on mine. I run it into a notebook. I get this error message. I'm able to capture that error message in full fidelity of anything else that was going on. Maybe I had to complete 3 steps, and Doug's like, did you actually complete the first 3 steps? And I can show inside that notebook, yes, I did complete those first 3 steps first, and then I get this error message. So that's collaboration is an extremely key thing they're used for. Data analysis, we'll touch on this a little bit, not a whole lot. This isn't a data science crowd, so I do have a little bit in here that I think is relevant to y'all, but we'll just touch on that lightly. And then the last thing that they're popular for, and something I definitely want to get this crowd motivated to take a look into, is just using notebooks as a job file.
Hey, Aaron, I just wanted to underline what you said about collaboration. I found, using this as a collaboration tool was really excellent, especially with when we were going back and forth. And then I've actually started using that with other colleagues. It's a really, if you learn how to use it well, it's an invaluable tool in that space, as well as others.
Yep. It's just, it's nonstop. We use it all the time for collaboration. When people think, anything that's even slightly complex, you know, a couple steps, like I said, when something breaks, it's easier to just show all the context of everything in the notebook. So let's move on to the next one. We'll go over here. So the next one is, where can I use Jupyter Notebooks? And I mean in the context of obviously PowerShell notebooks or SQL notebooks that we're talking about right now. You can use them in Azure Data Studio. You can use them in VS Code. You can use these exact same notebooks as is in a Jupyter Server. Jupyter Server comes with Azure Data Studio. And so to prove that right now, if we go down here and we just switch off of here, we go to, I'm sure you all are used to the PowerShell integrated console. So same location, switch over to output, switch over to notebooks, and then you're going to see your Jupyter running server is running at this location. You just follow that link, let that pop up, and then here you go. Here's a Jupyter server, and here are some locations where I've got some notebook files. I can just go ahead and open up one of these notebook files and go ahead and I can run it if I want, or I can just start reading through the results if that's what I need. Continue with that kernel one. All right, so let's go back over here. Bring that back down. And I believe the latest version of VS Code is also starting to bring the Jupyter server down for the ride as well. But like I said, I don't use VS Code all the time. I do use it pretty regularly. If I got to edit a JSON file, I'm going to do it there.
Hey, Aaron.
Yep.
I didn't see on your list, but my binder.
Yep. Yep. Great point.
So my binder is another way that you can run it. It actually, you can actually repos on GitHub.
Yep.
Or you can actually grab a repo that has books, and I use it with the .NET Interactive pieces. And you go off to My Binder. It's a free service. You can drop the repo name into My Binder. It will actually clone it into a Docker container and then spin up that exact Jupyter notebook that you saw. But it's all in the browser, and you don't have to install anything on your local machine. That's become a very big way for data scientists and other people to do things. And if you use the .NET Interactive piece, you get the PowerShell part and everything you're seeing tonight. These same notebooks will run in there. So it's yet another way to explore this stuff.
Yep.
Cool.
All right. Thanks for reminding me of that. I didn't think to put that on the list. So those are the places that you can use them. Use the Jupyter notebooks. Where can you run a Jupyter notebook? And again, we're kind of talking the context of this this presentation where we're talking about PowerShell notebooks, we're talking about SQL notebooks. So you're going to obviously be able to execute them in all those locations that you saw above, but you can also run them honestly at any PowerShell prompt. And there's two ways you could do that. The easiest way would be to just go ahead and use the PowerShell notebook module from this cranky New Yorker I know who built that. And that is going to be your easiest way to do it.
Where do you get that?
You get that out of the PowerShell gallery. Just install module, PowerShell notebook, boom, done. The other way is, well, these are all JSON files, so you can convert from JSON and then execute the code if you want, but that sounds painful to me. So, but if you wanted to, I mean, it's totally possible. If you like to sling JSON code, go for it. You'll love it, I'm sure. You can also run these in SQL Server. SQL Server, relational database engine, any of the flavors of it that have the SQL agent. So that'll be pretty much all the on-prem versions. It'll be the SQL Managed Instance version up in Azure, or if you have it in a VM, just run into a PowerShell task. And especially in SQL 2019, you can stop the auto loading of SQL PS and have free reign over whatever modules you want to load right away. So that's an extremely helpful feature in 2019. Another place that you can run it is in Interact, but I haven't gotten that far. Like I said, I've got 3 kids, and they take a lot of time, and they are. It's an amazing learning experience doing distance learning in the middle of a, in the middle of a pandemic. I'm learning things about how kids learn that, you think I would have figured that stuff out when I was 5 or something. But it's interesting little learning opportunity that we're getting out of this pandemic. So I'm just not keeping up with things as much as I want to. But luckily, Doug has figured it out. So if we get a minute, maybe he'll show us some of that. And then there's probably some other places that I don't know that you can execute these things. But those are some places that you can execute them in addition to the places where you can run them interactively. So where do the notebooks run, though? By default, they start off in $home, and that's an interesting thing to keep in mind. That seems to be the case all the time so far. I bet that's going to be like a configuration option or a parameter option in the near future. If, the pace of things these days, it might already be in there, and I don't even know about it. They might have checked it in last week. But when you kick off things, it's important to know that you're running an instance of PowerShell.exe or pwsh.exe, and you're running it starting in the $home. All right, so where can I read Jupyter Notebooks? There's a reason I put this in here. You can read them obviously in any of these editors that I told you about up here. And very importantly, you can read them in GitHub. And you might be wondering, why is that important? Well, the thing is, if someone has a Jupyter, let's say they're stuck in ISE land and they don't have any Jupyter editors, but you've solved some problem and it's in a Jupyter notebook and you want them to be able to see it. Well, the great news is that they can just dive in and they can see it inside of any GitHub web page. So if we select this, this one right here, this Jupyter notebook that I created last year, we can see it. It'll render right here. And you can take this and, if the person needed to, they could copy the cells out. If you see that there's quite a few cells in here, so that'd probably be painful. Luckily, Doug Fink has this export PowerShell notebook to script, I think is the name of the function.
That's it, nice and long.
Yes, and the crazy thing about that command is that you can take a web URL and pass it in there, and it'll go scrape that off the web for you, and you never even have to download the notebook locally. It'll go grab it, download it for you, and convert it, and turn it into a PS1 file for you, all by itself. So one module, so many uses. All right, so we've got that. I think we covered everything else. And one other topic, what are Jupyter Books? Again, I was telling you that Jupyter Books are, you can see an example of one right here in this Docker session that I did last year. They are simply a collection of notebook files in potentially a folder structure, like I've got a folder structure here, and then with some improved navigation. So you can add things like where to go with these things. So this is, if you open up this particular Jupyter book, this is the first page that you see, and it's got the different chapters of the book. The chapters kind of, in my case, they relate to the, the file folder here that I put them under. So they're just a collection. And this is one of the places where you can solve the situation of you need to do a PowerShell step and then you need a SQL step, or you need a PowerShell step and then you need a custom step. You can just do one step in one notebook or 7 steps or whatever, and then in another notebook you can set the kernel to whatever you need, do it there, put it all together, batch it all up as a book, and share it out there for other people to use. All right, so pretty simple. And Jupyter Books are over here on the left-hand nav in Azure Data Studio. They're right there. You can get a default one. Provided notebooks, it only comes with one so far, but there will be more in the near future, I hear. You can get to remote Jupyter Books. And Doug, did you ever get yours working?
No, I have. I'm still playing with that.
Okay, yeah. So it turns out when you have one of these Jupyter Books, even if you have it in a repo, you still have to go through the release process, and then it will be available, researchable, and downloadable. So I haven't figured that out yet, but I hope to get that maybe by next month off my to-do list and onto my to-done list. So we'll see. But that's it for Jupyter Books. Any questions so far before I go in and start showing what exactly are PowerShell notebooks? Okay. All right, so I'll dive in if there's questions that come up, just shoot me a note. So to give you a little background on the PowerShell notebooks, why are there two different kernels? So this person, Sergey Vorobev, I hope I'm pronouncing that last name correctly. This fine, wonderful human being went and created pretty much everything you needed for a basic PowerShell kernel that would run both on Windows and on Mac OS and Linux, and put it all together and put it into this project, Jupyter PowerShell. And it was mostly working, proof of concept. This person was on the PowerShell team for a while, and then he moved on to another company. So obviously he didn't have as much desire to work on it afterwards. But this got found by the community, and the community pointed the Azure Data Studio team to it, and they were able to make some quick tweaks and pull it in and use it. And that's how we got started. And that was right around a year ago. In fact, I think it launched at Ignite last year, if I recall correctly, and really got us up and running. Funny enough, I think the most popular group of people using PowerShell notebooks might be SQL Server people. Even though you can run them inside of VS Code, and now you have .NET Interactive, it is crazy the amount of people that I run into that are SQL people, and they've got a half dozen, 3 dozen, 4 dozen PowerShell notebooks sitting around for various things. So that open source project was great, got us started, got us moving down the road, helped me with a lot of demos, helped me with a lot of documentation. But then the .NET team has put together the .NET Interactive set of kernels, and among them are C# and F# and PowerShell. And I would definitely use the .NET PowerShell going forward. It's got a few small tweaks to it that make it a little better, and they also come with the ability to run a magic. So if you're doing something in .NET PowerShell and you're running through a certain step, and then you get to something where there's no commandlet for that, and you're a developer like Doug is, and you just want to go ahead and be able to run that command in C#, you can just call magic and run it in there in the middle. I don't know how to do that because I don't know how to write C#, but maybe one day I'll figure all that out. But they definitely have some great advantages, and I would definitely recommend that you start taking a look at them. You're available to use them here in Azure Data Studio, in VS Code, also in that My Binder place that Doug mentioned, and and also the Jupyter server as well. Although it looks like my Jupyter server didn't like it, so maybe not at the Jupyter server, maybe I just didn't follow one of the steps. A couple things that I want to call out that the .NET PowerShell kernel does that the regular PowerShell kernel does not is it does a true read host for you, and it does a correct get credential. The other one did a get credential, would do it, but it would do it in a pop-up window, and some people really did not like that experience. So this one does it interactive within the notebook session. Outside of that, I mean, use your imagination. You can put any PowerShell code you want in here. You're running an instance of PowerShell. It's a fresh instance when you fire it up. No two PowerShell notebooks talk to each other. So, as you run a step, let's say you set a variable in one step and then you go down and you add a code cell. So let's say my thing is equal to whatever it is, get dash PS drive, right? And if I go ahead and set that in this cell, run that now, I can create another cell below and go ahead and have it show me that information right there. So that all works until you close it, and then it all disappears. This is great that you've got a single session. Helps you, for moving on for steps. But again, the session in this PowerShell notebook is not talking to the session in this PowerShell notebook. I hope someone can solve that little situation and figure out a way to do that, make them talk to each other, but I don't know how. But I'm putting it out there in case someone can think of it.
That's a good point. Jeff asked a question.
Yep.
Can I assume PowerShell profiles are ignored? I don't know the answer to that one.
I don't know what the current answer to that one is. That is a great question because no, they were not originally. So I think they are now no profiled. So let's see. So the easiest way for me, because I always start with SQL, is to go over here, do new notebook, do a code cell, switch this. Oh, dang it. Ran into a bug. Really weird bug. So if I do get PS drive, in my profile, I always load 100% of the time. I load the SQL Server module and a couple other things in every single instance, the current user all hosts profile. So if we see SQL Server in this one, then we know it's there. Nope, we do not. And we don't see the other ones either. So no, it looks like this one is no profiled at this point. So let's go ahead and try the other one. And new notebook. And switched over to, when running here to get to the .NET Interactives, right now, again, I'm in the insiders build. You have to go to Python 3 first. Let that figure its stuff out, give that a few seconds, and then you'll be able to see the .NET Interactive ones. Again, these are also still technically in preview. They're behind a feature flag. So obviously they're not finished yet. The team's not ready to go shouting, hey, check this out. But if you need this kind of functionality, it's already there and you don't mind maybe dealing with a couple of issues, definitely give it a try. So if we run get PS drive here in the .NET Interactive, so it, nope, I don't see SQL Server on that list.
Nope.
Nope. So here we have our answer, no profile.
Hey, thanks for the, so that's something new to me. I didn't know you can get to the .NET Interactive inside of ADS by going to Python first and then to PowerShell. So made my life easier. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Aaron?
Yep.
You have
Alexander.
a book called Profile Support among your notebooks. Just open it. All info is there.
Profiles. Yeah. So I stole these from .NET Interactive. Thank you. Right here, I stole all of this from .NET Interactive except for the what are down here. So profile support. Brilliant, Alexander, right here. Already right there. So I'll let you guys dive in and figure this out yourselves, and I'll read it tomorrow. I want to keep things going along, try and not take too long to show you all this. But there's also some other example notebooks out there. I kind of stole them and put them in my repo. I guess I technically probably shouldn't have done it. I should have pointed you there, But if anyone wanted to check this out, I wanted you to have this. If you follow this link, that should go straight back to their repo. Let's see. Yes, it does go back to their repo, so you at least know that it's their file. I promise I didn't mess with it, and I'll probably need to delete that out, I'm guessing, before someone notices it. It's really their stuff, but get it tonight, and you'll have it. So there are quite a few other things. Let me just show you a magic real quick. One example of a magic. After this thing gets loaded here, just so that you can get your head around it. And by the way, while I'm waiting for this to load, all the editor support that you're seeing here is not part of the notebook. It is part of, honestly, Visual Studio Code, even though I'm in Azure Data Studio. In Azure Data Studio, if you check the marketplace here, we've got the PowerShell extension. This is the same PowerShell extension that you get in VS Code, and we just get it, whatever the flavor is, a few hours later. The insiders build sometimes actually lags a little bit even further behind for some reason, and I think it's just because it's a lot of processes that no one originally foresaw when they set it all up. But that's okay. If you need the preview extension, we can bug Tyler or bug Rob, and we can get a copy of it put into our marketplace. So no big deal there. So let's go back to those files though. So we're going with what are PowerShell notebooks. We've got that one. What's better about .NET Interactive? There are a couple things in here, as I pointed out, of how to go ahead and run like read host and get credential, and that they're better. And then I also have the command in here to update your .NET Interactive to make sure you're on the latest version, so that you've got everything working. There's some other cool things, but now that I'm looking at the clock, I like plots and charts and stuff like that. I don't want to take up time with you. I want to show you something very, very cool. I'll skip, SQL notebooks. I'll just do it very quick. SQL notebooks, they're kind of, one of the biggest selling points of Azure Data Studio, the fact that you can run a SQL notebook here. We've got a kernel here. One of the coolest things about it, and one of the things I told you I saved in here, if you download this notebook, you'll get the same thing in Azure Data Studio, is this chart. Now this chart, not super killer or anything like that, but let's say you're having a problem and the answer was most easily explained in a chart. Well, all I did was I ran this command right here and connected to my database, got the results back, got 58 rows, and then it's got a little, it's got a couple actually different chart options. So if I wanted to change the data back to a table, I can do that. Or it's got this little chart option, hit show chart, boom, my data's in a chart. So again, that saves with the notebook when I hit save, assuming I don't clear it out. We could actually use this in PowerShell land in Azure Data Studio if someone just takes the time to write a way to be able to pipe to it. It's actually a embedded control. It's open source. So we could be taking, instead of doing format table auto size, we could be getting a nice rich grid result set like we have here in the SQL land, and we could use that with our PowerShell results. So if anyone feels like taking that on, I'd love to see it. And I'll definitely help connect you to where the dots are for it. So let's go on to how can I convert a PowerShell notebook. So let's see, give me a second where I can see my list. Give me 1 second, I'm gonna show you something cool. Sorry, I've lost my cursor now.
Wow, that looks like a most excellent module to use.
It is, right? It's good, good one to pause on, right? Brilliant. All right, so it looks like I lost that on my clipboard buffer. Oh wait, here it is, maybe. Let's try this. Let's do new query. This is where I bugged the living heck out of Doug over the summer. So I just fired up a regular T-SQL query inside of Azure Data Studio, regular old select star from sys databases. And over the summer, I worked on a hackathon to create all the guts of the logic behind this little button. If I hit this button right here, it takes that file. Let me go do it this way. So it takes the comment blocks and turns those into text cells, and it takes the code and it puts it into code blocks, and then more text puts it into another text cell. Works on those comment blocks right there, and works pretty darn well. We've got a newer version with a little bit more better logic coming soon, but it, as you could see right there, works pretty well just like that. And then if you're in a notebook and you want to convert it to just a straight T-SQL file, you just hit the export button, and there you have it. You're back here. So if we wanted to say, if we want to change this and say it's this objects, for example, just to show you that it's live, hit that button, and then here, now you say sys objects right there. So I would love to create this functionality for PowerShell notebooks as well. Doug and I have created it for the module. So if you go to, oops, get out of the way, Zoom. Guess I should have put a link to the module in there. That probably would have been more helpful. Excuse me a second while I get back there. Not that one. Not that one. Too many open. I should have been closing as I was going through. That would have been brilliant. Oh, did I close it already? How can I convert? So how can you convert? Right here. The PowerShell Notebook module has it in there. We have a command in here called convert to, if you're working on the SQL side, convert to SQL Notebook. If you're working on the PowerShell side, we've got a command in there. Oop, did I jump too far? This one, sorry, jumped too far. A convert to PowerShell Notebook command. And that'll convert all your files for you. And it needs some more logic behind it. It's kind of a V1, but it works for basic files and should at least help you out a little bit. And if there's problems with it, heck, file a issue on the repo, and we'll see if we can get it fixed. So all of this is in there inside of the repo that I put up. Just install the module PowerShell Notebook. If you're installing a module inside of a PowerShell Notebook, you always need to use the -force to get around the obligatory "Are you sure?" prompt that you get back. And then just go ahead and run it, and it will install successfully, probably. So there you go. There's that one. And
so Aaron, just to dial in a bit on that,
Yep.
not that I don't want to steal your thunder, but the reason I came up with the PowerShell Notebook and then Aaron joined in on it all was so if I write a lot of PowerShell in a PowerShell file, I can set it up so that it can become tedious if you want to set up an entire instruction process inside of a notebook, inside of ADS or in Jupyter Notebooks, right? You have to keep adding a cell, you got to put the code in, you have to add a text cell, you have to add some markdown. So by doing it this way, you can lay it out in an easy way that you're, with comments and with the actual code, be it SQL or PowerShell, and then you have a PowerShell command that can actually just look at a range of PowerShell PS1 files or script files, and then it just generates all the proper JSON to create the IPYNB file, which is the Jupyter Notebook piece, and then you're off to the races. So you don't have to sit there and mess around with code. And if you move code around, you can just run the command again. It'll recreate the notebook in the proper format with the cells ready to go. So it just makes life easier. And then if you do get, like if I get something from Aaron, I can then use the same module, and then I can convert from a PowerShell, from a notebook, whether it's SQL or PowerShell, and I convert it and just dump out all the script information or straight into Markdown, and I'm ready to go. I don't have to futz around with a bunch of different things. So that was just the idea behind it. Okay, good.
Yeah, great point. Thanks for pointing that out. I was keeping an eye on time and was kind of rushing through, and that's like one of the highlights of the whole thing, right? So if you want to put that to the test in the SQL side, I've got it set up so you can go ahead and download a whole bunch of SQL files that are out there on GitHub, put them into whatever directory you want, and it'll go ahead and convert them. And this has worked so far every single time I've run it, which is great. And so hopefully it'll work for you. If it doesn't, let me know. If there's issues out there, I'd love to try and help solve them. So there we've got that for conversion. Now let's talk about automation. And here's where we're going to talk about SQL a little bit, where it's, if you didn't come here for the SQL, that's fine. I'm trying to show you what SQL has been able to do. And Doug has been able to do at least some of it. And hopefully Doug can do more, and hopefully other community members can do more as well. So let's take a look real quick. So if you're running I'll just close this down so we don't have as much on the screen. If you've got the SQL Server module, you can go ahead and run this invoke SQL Notebook commandlet that they included about a year ago, last summer. And what it'll do is it'll run a notebook for you. And you only need to tell it three things. You need to tell it the name of the notebook. You need to tell it the name of the SQL Server database you want to connect to. And you need to give it, well, you don't have to, but you should give it a name for a results file. If you don't, it'll just go ahead and echo back whatever the name of your notebook was. Let's say your notebook was named Bob, and then it's going to say something like Bob-results or Bob-output, something like that. But I've got some examples down below for how you can build your string for your results file. I went ahead and put together a little example for you. So if you run this cell here, this will go ahead and download the BP check, best practices check for a SQL Server. And it's an IPYNB files, and it's all T-SQL code. And this best practices check comes from the Tiger team at Microsoft, and they know what they're talking about. They know what the best practices are. And they're not perfect practices, they're best practices. They don't work for everyone. But these are best for most people in most situations, and they're good to run against and see what they turn back for you. But let's say you've got 50 SQL servers and you want to run all these best practices checks, and you don't want to have to connect to them, run them, which there's like 30 code cells in there, collect the results, hit save on the file, rename the file, and then go to connect to the next SQL server, and then run everything, and then wait for that to finish. And it's going to be a time-consuming process, and you just want to get to the results. So you can use the invoke SQL Notebook commandlet to go ahead and help you do precisely that, a bit of a fan-out scenario. We have this thing called registered servers in SQL Server or Central Management Server, where it's a list of your SQL servers. And so here's my list of SQL servers here, and you can have subdirectories full of them. You can go ahead and run a command against all of them. Here, what I'm showing you is just kind of on the way to getting there of, you get your list of SQL servers, and then you connect to them, verify that you've got connectivity. You can run these steps, and if you run into an error, then you've got a problem connecting that server, but hopefully you should get a result set back like this, telling you about all your SQL servers there. And then again, this is just to make sure that everything's connecting properly and doing loop inside of a loop. And if all that works, then you're ready to go on to the next step. In here, we go and we grab that BP check file that we downloaded, and we go through our registered server list. We grab all those instances, and for each instance that we find, we run the invoke SQL notebook commandlet against it. We pass it in that server name. We want to go to the master database for this. Here's that bpcheck file. And then here's where I construct the output file name so that each server gets its own unique instance name in there and whatever the date is in a format that's usable. I figure if you are running this more than once per minute, you probably don't understand what the check is all about. So that should be good. And saves the files there for you. And then you can start opening them up and taking a look at them. And it works great. This is also in here, there's the same progression if you want to, how you would do it if you want to do it with credentials. So this whole concept of putting together a set of files and having them done and ready to go, and I've already run this, so just show you real quick. I've gone ahead and run this against all my instances. Here is the output. You'll see, it's probably hard to see, but the size is different per server because it runs different queries depending on what version I'm running. So if I go ahead and open up this resultant file, you'll see that it has what is essentially the original bpcheck file. I didn't open it for you, but it is bpcheck. I guess I could do that for you. Downloads and grab bpcheck. Let's just see what it looks like. The event you, come on. There we go. In the event that you want to see what it looks like beforehand. Keep waiting. Uh-oh. Maybe it's too big a file. And if it doesn't work, then you'll just have to take my word on it. It does work. And that was my results file right there. Did this earlier this morning against my machines. And it's got all your results. So you're able to fan out, run your results against, run your queries against your servers, get your results back, store them into a single location. Looks like that's not going to open that file. We'll just close that. Oh, I didn't think I was going to close the whole thing. I just learned something. All right. But the reason I show you that is Doug has very graciously put together a command inside of the PowerShell Notebook module for doing just that same thing, invoke SQL Notebook. Doug is smart enough to use smaller demo files, like his demo.ps1 or demo.txt. It's a rather small file so that you can go ahead and run that. And what it does when you run this invoke PowerShell Notebook here from inside the notebook, it actually renders the results back into the screen, which I was pretty impressed with. And trying to be on an interactive here. Oh, I said that and then didn't come back. There it goes. Second time's a charm. Good deal. So there are the results of that notebook, and all the results are displayed right here for you. And that I thought was pretty cool. And then of course I could hopefully export it to a file so I could get together all my results from all my different machines.
Yep, that's how it was intended to work. Good
Wonderful.
demo.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Who thinks of this stuff? All right, so hopefully people have not fallen asleep. Oh, man, we haven't shown them the greatest feature yet. Here's why I'm doing it from this one. So, Doug, have you ever been looking at something on a page, on like a docs page, right?
Yep.
And let's do a little side-by-side action here. And, you know, Doug, do you love PowerShell? I love PowerShell, right?
Absolutely.
And when I see things, I want to run them in PowerShell when I see something cool. And sometimes I get to a particular thing that's really cool, but I find out, oh, I need this example and I need to be able to do this, but they wrote it in Azure CLI and I want it to be in PowerShell along with all my other PowerShell code. So with today's build, if you fire up a text cell here and you come in here and you grab this web page and highlight all this stuff that you want.
Including the image?
including the image.
Oh man.
Not just, in fact, not just the image, which yes, it brought it over, and it actually brought it over in dark mode, like my docs page. That's funny. I didn't realize it was going to do that. It brought in those code cells, because sometimes I find things and I'm like, that's great, but I need to, all my other code is PowerShell. So I'm going to need to do this exact same set of steps, but I need to convert this to PowerShell code. So this would give me an easy way of having all the context of what was going on, and trying to figure out how to convert this to the corresponding PowerShell commands.
So wait a minute. So you actually just copied a web page into the text area inside an Azure Data Studio?
Yes.
Text block? Amazing.
Yep. So it rendered all of the code for me. So then I can take this code and I can copy that out, and I can go ahead and put that into a code cell and paste it on in there. And then now I can go about trying to figure out, well, how do I change AZ network NSG rule create over to some corresponding PowerShell command, so it'll work with what I want it to work with. And it even, hopefully, yep, it even does the tables inside of there now as well.
Nice.
Thank you, Doug, for pointing that out. It's amazing how fast they were able to get that fixed. So, yep. So that is the major highlights I wanted to cover with you guys. If y'all are asleep, I totally understand. If you want to see more, Doug has at least succeeded in getting the interact portion to work, so that you can schedule these PowerShell notebooks as jobs eventually. But Doug, I don't know if you even have a demo for that handy, or if you can at least talk to it a little bit so that people would want to know.
Cool. Do you want to hang out for a few more minutes? Actually, I wasn't going to show interact. I was going to show to my binder stuff.
Oh yeah, sure. That'd be great.
I wasn't really prepared to do a demo, but let me spin this up for just a couple of minutes because it might be cool. Let me share the screen. Go ahead.
Yeah, and one last thing.
Yeah.
When I tell everyone, like how awesome this is and all that, let me tell you a real world use for these things, like real world. I am currently trying to get some new PowerShell commandlets built for something that I can't talk about right now. But to get that done, I need to work with someone on the PowerShell team who knows absolutely nothing about SQL Server. And they need an up and running SQL Server to work against. And they need to be able to blow it away and recreate it anytime we get anything wrong. And I've already got that figured out inside of a PowerShell notebook. And this is the one I showed you guys earlier. This notebook, I was able to send to that person, and they were able to have their SQL Server up and running, and then we can collaborate, not in this PowerShell notebook, but in actually a different one, trying to get these commands to work. And then we're able to send our results back and forth in another PowerShell notebook. But this is just some documentation I had built last year, and I was able to send it to this person, and in 5 minutes they were up and running. So these things can be a huge time saver for you. And I definitely think y'all ought to take a look into what the possibilities are here for this.
That's a really awesome use case. And marrying Jupyter Notebooks, SQL Notebooks, all this kind of notebook interaction with Docker is definitely the next level. So,
yeah.
Super cool. So I'm going to take back the screen, and I'll do a quick demo of my binder.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let me see if I can. Awesome. All right. So hopefully I'm sharing my screen.
Yep, I can see it.
Cool. So I'm also going to take this an opportunity to do a little my own infomercial real quick. So I have this thing called Tiny PowerShell projects that I've been playing with. I actually ported a I ported a Python. Somebody wrote a Python project, and they wrote a book for Manning. And they called it Tiny Python Projects, and they put it up on GitHub. So I grabbed that and I converted the 22 chapters of examples into PowerShell. I thought it had some interesting possible value for us PowerShell folks. I've been tweeting about it the last few days. If you want to take a look at it, come and check it out. What I did is I took it to another level, I thought, and what I did was when I checked it in, I started writing PowerShell notebooks for each of the chapters on top of the code. And so that will bring me to talk about this thing called My Binder, and it's called mybinder.org. And Microsoft folks use it. The .NET Interactive folks use it to demo their new features. Basically, you come here and you paste in a GitHub repo that has the appropriate setup, which is not that difficult, but if it has the appropriate setup, you paste in the name, like Tiny PowerShell Projects, you click launch, and this thing will actually go off and start building a Docker image and then load it up into Kubernetes, into their space, and then launch up a page for you. So if you actually look at my repo, in my README, I actually have a thing called Launch Binder. You can click on that, and then that should give you a fully realized, this is the way I set it up. I don't want to do a super deep dive. I set up the Docker file to copy my repo into the Docker container, and then that's what gets displayed inside of the Jupyter running notebook. And Aaron showed this earlier. You can also run this locally. So if we grab one of these things, like let's grab 11 bottles of beer, because I'm sure we're all ready for one of those. This is the solution that was the example. It's a simple thing that you can actually pass in a number from 1 to whatever, and it will print out how many bottles of beer are left on the wall. So if you didn't want to install this, you can go to My Binder, you can go to my repo, click on the Launch Binder, get into the Jupyter Notebooks, come to the particular example you want, click on the actual notebook, and then I have the code set up as examples, and then you can actually click on one, and you can run it. And it will actually use that code, hopefully, and it shows you all the bottles of beer, and I select the last 2, which obviously looks like my code doesn't work that well. And we can grab the next example over here. So this is actually running the code from the repo in a Jupyter Notebook that was launched all in the cloud, right? So there would be nothing that you install and you're ready to go. My opinion, this is next ways that we're going to be teaching people how to do things. It's another way to do all kind of interactive stuff. Everything that Aaron did, he could have easily set up a repo, set all these pieces up, except for the Docker pieces, which we won't go into. Like, you can't spin up Docker containers inside Docker containers easily. But you can have a whole bunch of different things that you want to do, and then you can provide a repo for people that can launch into the My Binder, get a Jupyter Notebook instance running, click on these notebooks, do a bunch of different things, and here I can actually save my results, as Aaron showed before, and then he can go in and do the same thing, and we can then collaborate in the cloud without us installing any of these components on our machines, or we're just up and ready to go. Somebody also, that reminds me, that somebody asked a question in the chat room, can you use PSM1 files? Can you use PowerShell modules? Absolutely. Not only that, but you can come in here. If I create a new cell, I can sit here and I can do something like install module, because I'm actually running .NET, or I'm running a Linux container, I should say, and I can install a module. I can even install Pester, for example. I can do a force. Let's see if that actually works. So I just kicked that off. Hopefully a real-time demo will work. So I can actually kick off, and you can see I just actually installed Pester in my Docker container in the cloud, ready to go. So one of the first cells that you have could be all of your installs. Even better, back in the Docker file inside the repo, okay, you can actually install, I don't know if I have any of those here. Yeah, I didn't do any magic here, but you can actually do you can use Docker commands to run and do installs of all your modules, so that when this notebook comes up, it's ready to go, and the user of your notebook doesn't have to do any of that work. So there's lots of ways to slice and dice the problem, make life easy, doing collaborative interactions. So it's very cool. And to close that out, let's do an interact. This is the tool that, another tool that you can run on your machine. I think this was written by Facebook. I'm not positive. I think it might be Facebook. But this is actually, you can pick your different runtimes, your kernels. You can pick your PowerShell. And in this particular environment, 1.4, I can run that. And I'm actually doing pure PowerShell here in an interact. So this is another environment that gives you different capabilities, different visuals, and it uses the .NET Interactive kernels as well. Microsoft's working with these folks. So the future of Jupyter Notebooks in many, many different ways that you can slice and dice it is really exciting. And it's definitely something I think you want to put in your toolbox for lots of the reasons that Aaron set up earlier this evening. So that was my 5 minutes there. Anything else you want to add, Aaron? Oh, I don't think we all know.
Yep. There we go. Yep. Just on the .NET Interactive notebooks, you probably do need to go to their .NET/interactive up on GitHub, and they've got some installation steps. They're take a couple minutes. Depends on your, speed of your connection, but maybe 20 minutes. But then you'll be able to get it up and running, and you do need that to be able to run through, at least on the Azure Data Studio side. I don't believe they are auto installed right now. So you would need to go through those steps to go ahead and get it installed and started. So just had seen a couple questions about that in the chat.
Awesome. All right. So I posted earlier, I'm going to get this recording up on YouTube. So if you go to YouTube, Doug Fink, F-I-N-K-E, one word, subscribe and hit the notification button on that. You'll see other stuff that gets put up there. I'll be probably posting things on notebooks and other Excel and PowerShell interactions, and I'll do some more videos on that kind of stuff, and doing these meetups. I'll be putting them up there, so check that out. Aaron, I want to thank you for taking the time to put this demo together. It's been awesome interacting with you over time. I look forward to some more of them. I know you have some kids to attend to, so
Yep.
I think did we get another question? Jupyter Notebooks are great for Active Directory. Absolutely.
Oh, hey, didn't know that. That's great.
Yeah, and I think there's some examples too of actually showing how to use Jupyter Notebooks and interacting with Azure. So that's all possible as well. And you can do things like invoke REST method, and you can interact with REST APIs, do all kinds of cool stuff that way. Awesome. Hope to see everybody next month. I'm really looking forward to Jeff Hicks as well. Aaron, thanks again, and we'll be talking soon. And you have a good night.
Yeah, and everyone, I'm SQL Variant on Twitter. Feel free to reach out to me there. Probably should have mentioned that at the beginning. My blog is sqlvariant.com. And let me know if these are working out for you. And let me know if you're running into problems. Maybe I can help you get around them, or point you to people who can fix them, or something. I'm really excited about this. Thanks, Doug, for giving me this opportunity to share the cool stuff we've worked on.
Definitely. And if anybody needs to get in touch with Aaron, you can reach out to me, we'll get them involved. Good stuff. Okay. Have a good one, everybody. Bye.
Thanks.
You're welcome.